diplomacy has been high.
Hello and welcome, I'm Pia and you're watching Gulf Today on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top stories this hour. With the return of the last Israeli hostage from Hamas's captivity, US President Donald Trump has declared the end of the war between Israel and Hamas. Trump has also hinted at wider talks aimed at normalizing Israel's ties with the rest of the Middle East, following in the footsteps of the Abraham Accords. US President Donald Trump earlier addressed the Israeli Knesset, lauding the peace deal signed in Sharm el-Sheikh, as well as calling for a pardon for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the corruption charges faced by the Israeli PM. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, alongside Israeli lawmakers, have announced his intention to nominate US President Donald Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize after the American president missed out on the 2025 gong. Sharif was joined by Israeli lawmakers who confirmed their intention to nominate the American president following his address to the Knesset. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has criticized US President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan for being quote-unquote too vague on Palestinian statehood. Lavrov has also stated that Russia hopes all agreements reached between Israel and Hamas under the plan would be implemented. US, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey have signed a joint Gaza declaration backing a ceasefire deal. The mediators signed the document alongside US President Donald Trump in the Egyptian resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has announced that the European Union will allocate €10 million to help establish a special tribunal to prosecute Russia's crime of aggression, and has also pledged an additional €6 million to support Ukrainian children deported by Russia and survivors of sexual violence. US President Donald Trump will be visiting Malaysia on the 26th of October. Malaysia and the United States will facilitate the ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia, which will require both sides to remove all mines and heavy artillery from their borders. Malaysian Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan has also stated that President Trump is looking forward to witnessing the signing of this ceasefire agreement. All right, viewers, those are the headlines in our top focus. After his visits to Israel and Egypt, US President Donald Trump has stated that his speech at the Knesset in Jerusalem was the perfect spot to publicly call on Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli PM is currently facing corruption charges. Listen in to what the US President had to say.
Thank you very much. I'm talking about rebuilding Gaza. I'm not talking about single state or double state or two state. We're talking about the rebuilding of Gaza.
What's the road ahead for governing
Gaza?
Gaza?
We'll have to see. I mean, a lot of people like the one-state solution. Some people like the two-state solution. So we'll have to see. I haven't commented on that.
And
No, I
trying to
actually
get
told
a
him I didn't want to bring up the pardon, but it was just a perfect spot. It was good.
This comes as Trump has urged the Israeli president to pardon Netanyahu in his one-hour address to the Israeli parliament earlier. Remember, Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 in 3 cases, one of which includes receiving almost 700,000 shekels in gifts from businessmen. However, there has been no ruling in Netanyahu's long-running trial, which began in 2020 and has been interrupted rather frequently during the 2 years of the war. He has pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. Earlier, Trump had also called for Netanyahu's trial to be cancelled. With us on the broadcast is Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich, Director of AJC Jerusalem and former IDF spokesperson to international media. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We've been seeing significant opposition to Netanyahu and his war policy within Israel itself. A lot of domestic pressure was placed upon him. Protests have been taking place as well. Demonstrators have also argued that he faces corruption charges. Now we see Donald Trump, the US president, who's now brokered this very important, crucial peace deal, publicly batting for Netanyahu in front of all of the Israeli lawmakers at the Knesset. What significance does this hold, and could this then sort of influence where the trial heads from here? Would Netanyahu be granted a pardon?
So thank you for the question, Pia. I was there at the Knesset yesterday when President Trump gave a speech which was more than 1 hour. So within this 1 hour, there were a lot of sentences which had significance. I'm not sure this specific one had any significance because basically the way I interpreted the sentences was that he actually likes Netanyahu. And from that perspective, he turned to the president who was sitting next to him and said what he said. But this has no influence on the trial, of course, which has been going on for a very long time. I think quite a few years, and maybe even will take a few more years. So except a declaration of fondness from the prime minister, I don't think it had any other implication.
And speaking of what we've really witnessed yesterday, we've seen history being made with the return of all of the hostages. They've been reunited with their families as well. We've seen scenes of elation, euphoria, jubilation on the ground. I wanted to understand from you, what were you feeling since you were there at the Knesset yesterday as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yesterday was a day, I would say, of euphoria here in Israel. 2 years and a few more days, it's a very long period of time. And we saw the condition of the hostages that returned 500 days being in captivity, and this was 7 months ago. So it was very difficult to believe what exactly we will see. And when the 20 living hostages crossed the border from Gaza to Israel, standing on their own 2 feet and smiling and waving, and then, of course, hugging with their families, there were so many emotions. People were glued to the TVs. They were screening, special screening events all over the place. For example, a hostage that went to a certain high school. Of course, he's no longer in high school, but his high school decided to screen the entire ceremony and celebrations in the school itself. And of course, in the hostage square in Tel Aviv. So it felt really historic day. But I do want to say that there are still hostages in Gaza which are not alive. You can definitely say that there are no longer living hostages in Gaza, but according to the agreement, Israel fulfilled its part. It released prisoners, many of them with multiple life sentences, which murdered a lot of people. It increased the aid going into Gaza, and it halted the fire. On the other side, the Palestinians were requested to release all of the 48 hostages. So after they released the 20 living, they released 4 more bodies last night. Now, right now, there's an identification process to see who are these people. But even if they are hostages, there are still 24 additional dead hostages left in Gaza. So we are very anxious to have all of them back. Live, of course, we have them, but we also want those who are not alive.
All right, ma'am, requesting you to stay on with us. We're tracking some other crucial updates. We're now learning that Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have backed US President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Sharif has lauded the US President as a man of peace and has called Trump's efforts in achieving a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas as historic. Sharif has called Trump the most genuine and wonderful candidate for the award. Now, Sharif's endorsement has come just hours after Netanyahu and the Israeli parliament nominated Trump for the prize. The Israeli parliament, in fact, gave a unanimous call to nominate Donald Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize. Knesset Speaker Amir Ohana has stated that there is no one more deserving than President Trump for this coveted prize. This also comes as last week the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado dedicated her win to Donald Trump. More news coming in. US President Donald Trump has extended a clear invitation to Iran, stating that Washington is ready to make a deal when Tehran is. Speaking at the Israeli Knesset, Trump has linked the end of the Gaza war to a wider push for peace in the region, calling it a historic new dawn. He has urged Iran to seize the moment, calling a future deal the best decision Iran could ever make. Now, Trump's remarks come after years of strained nuclear talks and a brief war between Iran and Israel earlier this year. The US was involved as well, bombarding 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Tehran, in response, now says that it is open to a fair and balanced US proposal, although no formal terms have been received. Now, the Iranian foreign minister has confirmed ongoing back-channel communications through mediators. Trump insists that Iran wants peace and says that the US will engage when Iran is ready. Still with us on the broadcast is Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich. Interesting statement coming in from Donald Trump. As I mentioned earlier, the Iranian regime, their foreign minister, did come out and state that the country is open to accept a proposal that the United States puts forth, but there is a condition that their nuclear program would not be touched. He's also claimed that the nuclear program is peaceful. In the meantime, they've also rebuffed attempts made by the E3 powers to once again restart negotiations. Why do you think Iran is now making these statements, on one hand rebuffing Britain, France, Germany, and on the other still allowing for that window for talks with the United States to be present through back channels? Is it because they've now been cornered and their proxies have more or less been decimated?
I would say the following: Iran is the world champion in stalling time. So these kind of statements we heard over and over and over again in the last decade. I unfortunately do not believe these statements, but it comes from a situation that there are many sanctions that were placed upon Iran. Iran is desperate for money, for funding, for income resources. It's anxious to do business internationally. And due to the sanctions, it's quite limited to do so. And therefore, it's releasing these statements, which again, I don't find a lot of content in them. Iran had plenty of time to negotiate with the E3 countries. They summoned the foreign minister numerous times to European capitals, and nothing came out of all these meetings, which I believe lasted just under 2 months. So they had their window of opportunity, it closed, and Iran really needs to decide where is it investing, because as satellite photos revealed in recent months, it began gradually to renovate its facilities, its military facilities, and has returned to manufacturing long-range missiles. So I would not see these declarations from Iranian officials as something with substantial importance or seriousness, just as another means to play some kind of a game, which basically is in order to stall more and more time.
I also wanted to understand from you what are Israel's concerns at large, because recently we've been seeing other statements being put out by the Iranian foreign minister. He has stated that the Cairo declaration, the agreement that they had reached with regards to a framework for the IAEA's monitoring of Iranian nuclear installations is now invalid. We remember how Iran earlier threatened to pull out of the NPT as well. So how is Israel really viewing all of these developments?
Yeah, so from Iran's perspective, any normalization or peace conditions that Israel forges with additional countries in the region, Iran sees as a threat. And therefore, it's of course objecting to these kind of relations. And this also has to do with the potential and directions which it is taking, and again repeating over and over again. This is something that did not change in many, many years. We hear it across the board from all the Iranian officials that they will not let go of their nuclear plans. Of course, they always say it's for purposes of civilian purposes. But if that is the case, and I'll take you back to just before June, when we had this 12-day war with Iran here in Israel, the reason that Israel chose this timing is because Iran developed a certain capability that allowed to arm the different long-range missiles it had with nuclear capacity. So once it reached that stage, the urgent military move was necessary. So that's a direction. This is not, arming missiles. This is not for civilian causes for sure. We are not here arming missiles with nuclear warheads here in Israel. So this is something that obviously is a lie from the Iranian perspective. So that's the framing of the situation. Iran will not leave its nuclear plans, and the world should be very much concerned from this direction.
All right, ma'am, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to more developments coming in. Lebanon's president has stated that his country and Israel should negotiate to solve pending problems between them, since war has not led to any positive results. These comments by President Joseph Aoun have come after U.S. counterpart Donald Trump brokered a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas in the more than 2-year war. Since then, there have been attacks and counterattacks between Lebanon's Hezbollah and Israeli forces, which intensified to a full-blown fight. And since the 14-month Israel-Hezbollah war ended with the U.S. brokered ceasefire in November 2024, Israel has carried out airstrikes in southern Lebanon targeting Hezbollah facilities that have left scores of people dead, including some civilians as well. Now, after the ceasefire in Gaza, the Lebanese president is now hopeful for the same between Israel and Lebanon too, and has stated that the conditions for doing so are moving towards negotiations in order to achieve peace and stability. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Peter Baum, foreign editor of Weekly Blitz from London. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We've been seeing, as I mentioned earlier, airstrikes taking place in Lebanon itself. Hezbollah targets that are still operating over there have been struck by the Israeli Defense Forces. In the meantime, there have been demands by the U.S. administration for the disarmament of Hezbollah. Talks were, of course, underway, but they did not really, we did not really see any breakthrough regarding that. Do you think now the Lebanese president coming out and making this statement has been influenced by the deal between Israel and Hamas being realized?
Good morning, Pia. Thank you again for having me on your program. Yes, I do. Clearly, the ability of President Trump to gather such a meeting of prominent world leaders, and time again during his speech, whether it was in the Israeli Knesset prior to the meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh and once again at Sharm el-Sheikh, he kept reiterating the need for peace and the need for other Arab nations to join the Abraham Accords. I have no doubt in my mind that this continuing pressure on Hezbollah in Lebanon, both politically and militarily from Israel, is purely designed to isolate Hezbollah even further and give confidence and support to the Lebanese government, headed, as we know at the moment, by the President Joseph Aoun, a Maronite Christian, and by Nawaf Salam, a Sunni Muslim, who only want to see Hezbollah disarmed from their geography. So I think Israel will continue with the military, their military presence in Lebanon, where they see a Hezbollah threat, and I see nothing other than political support given to the President and Prime Minister of Lebanon from other nations in a further attempt to isolate Hezbollah even more than it is isolated at the moment. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Lebanon became, perhaps with Syria or after Syria, but certainly following Syria, one of the new member states joining the Abraham Accords.
Indeed, in the meantime, we've also seen certain arrests taking place. 32 people have been arrested in recent months on suspicion of providing Israel with information on Hezbollah that have facilitated these strikes on the terrorist group. 9 people have in fact been tried by military courts and 23 others are under investigation as well. This, along with the stalling of the disarmament of Hezbollah, all of this is taking place together. What does the Lebanese government really gain by doing so? And have they now realized that with peace being the path forward as outlined in the plan, there's not much advantage in continuing this path?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things here that have to be dissected. Now, don't forget, Lebanon still has Hezbollah not only as a terrorist military force, but also it's a political force within Lebanon. And Muslims, Shia Muslims, do make up a decent size of the Lebanese population. And also the Speaker of the House, Nabi Berri, is of the political group Amal, which is closely affiliated with Shia Islam. So domestically, Lebanon still has to do what's deemed to be the correct thing by its Muslim population who are still supportive of Shia Islam. Now, the thing that running parallel with that, of course, are, as we've just spoken about, the pressure being put on Hezbollah as a military force. And it's that which has to be concluded and where Hezbollah's strength has to be diluted. It's interesting too that because of what's going on in Syria, the Lebanese feel confident enough that perhaps they can achieve that objective. But still, they have to be seen to be doing the right thing to placate those in their population that are still supportive of the Shia and the Hezbollah movement.
All right, sir, requesting you to stay on with us. We're tracking some interesting information coming in from Syria. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has stated that his government will use all available legal mechanisms to seek accountability from former leader Bashar al-Assad without entering into a conflict with Russia, which currently hosts Assad, who's in diplomatic exile. Al-Shara has stated that his government will use all legal means possible to demand that Bashar al-Assad be brought to justice while avoiding conflict with Russia, since that would be proving to be too costly to Syria at this point in time. Assad, who ruled Syria for nearly 25 years, fled to Russia in late 2024, ending the Baath Party's decades-long grip on power that began in 1963. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Peter Baum. I wanted to understand from you, why is al-Shara reluctant to confront Russia head-on regarding Assad's whereabouts?
Russia's former influence in Syria has been drastically reduced. However, there are still legacy elements of the Assad regime, which was, as we know, and as you stated, unequivocally supported by Russia, that is still a powerful influence in Syria. Nevertheless, I think this statement, if there is a political will to bring Assad to trial, will certainly be music to the ears of those millions of Syrian families who suffered under the Assad regime supported by Russia. Russia's influence in Syria, as I've just mentioned, has been dramatically reduced, but there are still elements that would be supportive of her. So the statement by the Syrian government, by the Syrian president, I think has been a wise one politically. He doesn't want any confrontation with Russia. On the same hand, by the same measure, I should say, he would love Russia to give up Assad. I don't think that would happen. I don't think Assad will ever be brought to trial. I think he'll probably die of old age before that comes to fruition. But nevertheless, it is a wise move politically for the Syrian domestic audience. So in that respect, I can perfectly understand, and other analysts around the region have made similar comments, that it's perfectly understandable why the new Syrian regime would want to make such statements. And I also believe by doing so, it further enhances its will to join the Abraham Accords that President Trump initiated, and he's so keen on other nations within the region joining up with. So it makes perfectly good sense, and at the same time it sets out his stall that no confrontation with Russia, despite Russia's previous support for the Assad regime, is going to be countered.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time for sharing your analysis of what's transpiring in the Middle East. Viewers, we're tracking some other very crucial updates. Malaysian Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan has announced that US President Donald Trump will visit Malaysia on the 26th of October. Now, Trump is expected to witness a ceasefire agreement between Thailand and Cambodia. Malaysia and the United States will help both countries remove mines and heavy artillery from their shared border. The agreement, called the Kuala Lumpur Accord, aims to ensure lasting peace. Officials hope to sign it during the upcoming ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur from the 26th to the 28th of October. This move follows deadly clashes which took place in July that left 48 dead and displaced hundreds of thousands along the Thailand-Cambodia border. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on Gulf Today and this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.
Yes.